Welcome to the Insura-Preneur Podcast, where we decode the secrets of organic growth and peak valuation for insurance entrepreneurs. Hi, I'm Michael Jans, founder of Insurance Profit Systems, Agency Revolution, and most recently, the Society of Insura-Preneurs, where our promise is, if you own it, we'll help you grow it. Whether I'm sharing key insights or speaking with innovators who are reshaping our industry, you'll discover proven strategies in each podcast for the perfect insurance trifecta: maximum growth, superior margins, and peak valuation. Hello, everybody. This is Michael Jans. Welcome to the Insura-Preneur Podcast. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we are live with a studio audience. So any laughter you hear is not canned laughter. They're literally laughing at us live. That being said, I have a return guest and a longtime good friend of mine. We've done business in this industry for, Dale, well over a decade. We had conversations that we can look back at with joy and perhaps some, I'm not sure what the word is, amazement. That being said, Dale Steinke is my guest. And as the industry continues to change, so does Dale's job title. So I'm going to ask Dale to introduce himself. And then we've got some really, really interesting things to talk about.
Hey, Michael,
Dale,
it's great
to you. Yes.
Great to be here. Thank you so much. My name is Dale Steinke. I'm the leader of the Agent for the Future Advisors, a newly minted group at Liberty Mutual, Safeco, and State Auto. And our job is to empower independent agencies to confidently navigate change. And we do that with research-backed digital-first approach that cuts the noise so agents, like people on this call, can confidently focus on solutions that drive success now and into the future, which is kind of what I'm hoping to accomplish today.
So interestingly, and I want to give some recognition for the entity or entities that you work with or work for. You've been at this game for a long time. And so my recollection, my first introduction to Dale Steinke was when Safeco introduced something called bricks and clicks. And this was back when I think we were just maybe launching Agency Revolution. And over time, Agency Revolution and Bricks and Clicks and Safeco became good friends. Dale was, if not party to, at least close to a number of conversations that I and other leaders of Agency Revolution had on the 47th floor of the Safeco building in downtown Seattle. Conversations which ultimately proved to be fruitful, but as you know, those were early days of digital marketing and took us some time to gain the traction that we wanted. And credit to some extent, certainly to Dale for helping to champion not just what we were doing, but really the industry's efforts to become to effectively utilize digital technologies for growth. So, boom! Thanks for coming back. I'm going to preface this conversation with this point, which I think is really critical. In my years in this industry and hosting a podcast, and prior to that, the CD of the Month Club, and prior to that, the Tape of the Month Club, I've had conversations with hundreds of industry leaders and researchers, analysts, observers. And typically when I want to examine like real data that demonstrates what's happening in the industry, I've been able to turn to the big advisory firms like McKinsey and Bain and IBM's technology and so on and so forth. However, most of their real data is on consumer behavior, like J.D. Powers, excellent with that, or carrier behavior. I find it so rare, but so refreshing to find legitimate data that demonstrates agency behavior, but also the relationship between agency behavior and agency success. One of the very few places that I can go to find that data is through It was through Safeco, but then Safeco Liberty, and now Safeco Liberty State Auto. I guess you have to say all three at once, maybe. So we're going to talk some real data. Fortunately, I think it generally totally confirms my own anecdotal data and sort of field research working with agents day after day and year after year. So I'm pleased to see that we're more or less in alignment on our observations, but your data it's so irresistibly or irrefutable that, well, I hope our listeners are paying close attention. So, boom, tell us, if you would. I'd like to start out with you've done some fairly recent research on agency behavior. What are you finding out?
Yeah, so our group is part of agentforthefuture.com, and it's really the Agent for the Future's job is to bring resources to the entire industry and to help independent agents. And so we've got a long line of research. I think one of the first pieces I wanted to bring up here was talking about we looked at agencies and said, okay, so how does digital adoption correlate with growth? And what we found was that we looked at a continuum of 15 different technologies and said, hey, for the agencies that are way on the laggard side, how do they compare to the ones who are over here doing the majority of these technologies? Well, the ones over here are growing 70% faster than those ones who are lagging in technology. 70%. Okay, now that's to me, that's huge, because that's for everything from e-sign to artificial intelligence. And so what we followed that up with in 23 was research on how technology drives growth for small commercial agencies. So agencies had 10% or higher growth were using a lot more technology. They were making technology investments. They were using their data to make strategic decisions more frequently than the slower growing agencies. And they were efficiently using the internet for marketing. Where you're looking at, so say for example, on the tech investment side, 80% of the ones at 10% or above are using it. 69% of the ones who are slow growing are using it. So it's not a huge gap, but it's a substantial enough gap that it stands out. And there's some technologies that I think about that are super important to that, and that our team talks about those constantly. Is like, hey, we see the fastest growing agencies are doing these things, and some of those agencies are winners of our Agent for the Future award. And we highlight them and say, okay, this agency over here is using a technology that has really made a difference for them and their clients and their employees.
Okay, let's start to break it down into little chunks, because I think to some extent there's a little bit of danger in simply saying use more technology or do stuff on the internet, and I'll explain that. It's because not all technologies actually work. Not all technologies deliver the results that they deliver on the promise that they deliver, or that that they offer.
And there's one other piece to that too: is not all agencies are equipped to use that technology, or at least not
right.
Right
Certainly,
mind, right?
Certainly, if we say, for example, if we say successful agencies, do social posting, for example.
Oh.
There's so much noise in the social world that, simply being one more noisy agency that says stuff is not going to make you the signal above the noise, right? So there is quality of execution. In other words, really understanding how to use the technical elements of the technology itself, but maybe even more important to that, I'd probably say much more important than that, there's the quality, there's the strategic quality. In other words, the quality of the content that you deliver, the thoughtfulness of the customer or the marketplace that you're attempting to have a relationship with. There's the crafting of the funnel itself, and what gets delivered at the top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, the bottom of the funnel. So in other words, yes, it's not just you can't just say, have a website, check it off. have marketing automation, check it. Have, do social posting, check it off and think that you're done. Marketing is a profession that, like all professions, has varying levels of skill and sophistication. So obviously, it's incumbent upon the agent to understand those principles and to gain some mastery over the use of those principles. So, boom, back to you on the technologies. But I also wanted to premise it with this.
Mhm.
I remember I saw something that Safeco published. This was a few years ago, and it was a kind of a horizontal bar, and it showed these are technologies that everybody must have, and these are technologies that the kind of more early adopters are going to use, and then there's some that like these are really way out there. And what struck me about it is that when this was published, marketing automation, of which Agency Revolution is sort of in that category. It was like right there in the middle. It's like, yeah, that's a sort of standard technology, is using some kind of way to communicate with your customer base. Okay. And that reminded me, when I saw that, I chuckled about some of the conversations you and I had over a decade ago, when it was like, yeah, it really makes sense, but it's kind of new, right? It's like, wow, that's so
Yeah.
when we're talking about technology, clearly the that game is changing constantly, and there are new technologies floating in now. Of course, AI driven technologies flying in, and they're probably a little more on the radical early adopter side. So let's start to break it down. Let's talk about break down what your survey revealed about which technologies successful agencies tend to use and tend to be good at.
And and there's a lot, and I think that continuum bar, we're talking about, I think
The
that's
continuum bar.
yeah. So the way I think about that, and is that just like I do with SEO, when I'm talking with agencies, is that, look, I'm not going to grade you based on what you do compared to another agency. I'm going to grade you based on what good actually looks like. And when it comes to things like marketing automation and social media, agencies are not getting judged based on the other agency down the street. They're getting judged on their experience and the rest of their lives with all the other businesses they interact with. And
Right.
and we know that, remember, I always used to say, it's like the why move at the speed of the internet when you can move at the speed of insurance. It's just
That's
that
my favorite Dale Steinke quote.
it's, and it's kind of a frustration for me, because it's like, I know that there's so much more we could be doing as an industry to really shine and take it to the directs and the captives, and really just overpower them. And I see some agencies that are doing that.
We're doing okay though. Where there are agencies that are, but as an industry, I think
market
we're
share is
taking it to
growing
them.
slightly.
Yes. Yeah,
Definitely
market
taking
share
it
is
to them.
growing.
So the thing though, that and the reason I say that though is that I think that there is a lot of these other players, have very deep pockets, and they can dictate the way that their agents interact. I know I'm taking this a little bit sideways, but bear with me. So
that's okay. I'm going to go sideways with you. I think this is an important point.
So the capabilities that many of them are going to roll out are going to be dictated to them. And they're going to create a customer experience and an employee experience that's very different than the experience in a lot of agencies today. And, if agencies can stay ahead of that, they're the ones who are going to be leading it, and other people are going to be catching up to them. I never like to be in the position of catching up to somebody else. I want to be the one out front, and they're chasing me. So that's when I talk about digital capabilities in agencies. I want to make sure that they're looking ahead and trying to utilize the things that are more forward thinking. What are you doing to improve the customer experience? What are you doing to improve your employee experience? Agencies, I hear all the time, I'm having trouble hiring. And I'm like, well, how efficient are your staff today? I know there's some other stats that I shared with you earlier. The Big I does the best practices survey, and you look at there was an update last October, and they looked at revenue per employee, and looking at average agencies versus versus top
Hmm.
quartile agencies, and you can see a
Pretty
marked
stunning.
difference. Every level of, from agencies of less than $1.25 million revenue to agencies that are 25 million plus. So there's a big opportunity there that I think, it's working on the business versus in the business, which, you've heard from, other people here, talked about frequently. And I know you're a big proponent of that as well. So, there's just opportunities to do a lot of better things with technology. And there's things that are really even not that new, but they're still game changers. I think about marketing automation is definitely one.
Okay, got it.
I think about things. I think of things like, how do you create that experience with the quoting process with your clients? How do you, the marketing automation helps after the sale, but there's also things like self-service, which is, it's not like it's a new thing, but there's still a lot of agencies that think, no, I want to handle that. And it's like, every time somebody, I'm on my soapbox now, every time somebody calls into your agency and asks for an ID card or certificate of insurance, that's costing you money. That's
Right.
costing you money every
Okay.
time that happens. And there are ways that you can do that without relying on your staff doing it. Power your staff so they can be enabled to do the things that drive revenue, not the things that cost you money.
Okay. So let's get the rubber on the road here. What did the survey indicate were, I guess I would say, core or essential technologies? And first, maybe let's break it down. My area of expertise, organic growth, tends to get me focused on front of the office customer facing technologies. And that may be largely yours as well. But of course, there are also internal back office technologies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about it from that point of view. What are the essential technologies? I mean, presumably, okay, this is before InsurTech was InsurTech. Presumably, in terms of the back office, obviously, it's core for everybody to have an agency management system.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a radical proposition. That said, I've got some fairly fast growth clients who use, who do not use one of the core industry agency systems, but the function in terms of functionality, that's a given in the industry now. Okay. So beyond that, what did your survey show were sort of the standard core technologies used by fast growth agencies?
Yeah. And so these fast growth agencies, so on the small commercial side, for example, comparative raters, if you look at the small commercial space, there's a lot of people saying that, pretty much 5 years from now, small commercial is going to look a lot like personal lines does today. And,
Meaning what? What does that mean?
meaning that it's going to be easy enough for you to get a comparative quote or to have somebody quote themselves, and then the agency completes it themselves, completes the sale themselves, but the customer is getting the data they want right away. I don't like to name drop all the time, different vendors, because I'm trying to be like Switzerland here, but it's Tarmica is one, their comp rater has a small number of small commercial pieces in it right now, but the customer can go all the way through the process and get to the point of either getting a quote, or a couple quotes that they can look at, or getting to the point where the agency says, you know what, I'm not going to let you see that, but I'm going to get the notification that you filled it out, and I'm going to reach out to you right away and finish that sale. So, they still own the relationship. So doesn't feel as commoditized as some agencies fear. So there's that, and I think there's to think that I'm going to get snarky again here too. It's like the idea that a small commercial agent, that a small business doesn't use the internet, once they become a business owner, it's not a legit. It's wishful thinking. It's like we use it for everything,
Right.
And so having that ready, using AI. Third-party data pre-fills, and predictive. There's a lot of different things going on in that space as well. I'm hoping to get to ITC again this year and sort of see what's going on there, because there's just a lot of interesting things that have been happening there.
Right.
And one thing I would say about that too is, if you've got anybody who's using Policy information collection is another sort of area right now that's coming across to the business line side. It's still very niche, but the idea there is that I'm talking to you, Michael, and I want to get all your information, whether it's a personal lines thing or a business lines quote. I say, look, Michael, I can sit on the phone here and interrogate you for the next 15, 20, 30 minutes, or I can just text you a link, go in there, sign into your current carrier, and it's going to send all the policy docs to me, and I'll be able to get all your stuff. And then I can start actually giving you consultative advice versus me just quizzing you if for the next 20, 30 minutes. And the policy information collection thing is really interesting because it's moving into the small commercial space.
Okay.
And so what you're getting is things like loss runs, named insureds, so there's all kinds of information there that's super helpful. And one of the other things I find interesting about it too is that, so say that client calls you and says, hey, I just want to get fleet insurance, or I want to get my car insured. It gives you all the policies they have with that carrier, so that now you know everything they have, and then you can be a more valued advisor and advise them on their overall needs versus that one thing. It speeds up the process, and why it works, I think, is that it creates not only speed up the process for the agency because they're getting all this information, they can use it more quickly to quote, drop it into a comp reader, whatever. But for the customer, it creates a faster, easier experience. I don't want to be on the phone with you. I don't want to be interrogated. I don't want to go look for my VIN number or look for my deck pages, because how the heck do I know where they're at? I have to go and say, it's like, okay, I'll get back to you. And they hang up, and then
right. It's like, okay, who else can I call? Right. How would you name that category of software?
Policy information collections, the easiest term I can come up with for it. Yeah. And
and then there are not a lot of vendors.
There's a few players in the space. Yeah. I mean, I'll name a few of them. Fies, InsureGrid, Canopy Connect. I'd say Canopy Connect is probably one of the ones that I'm seeing a lot of activity around now. Right. But those are there, and then there's also ones that are more traditional, like Salt, which does more of a form. So the user's filling out all the form information. So you still have to worry about whether that client's, it's a different approach. And some agencies prefer that. That's great. Some, the vendors out there for, agency websites have input tools as well that, the lead forms that are much more detailed. But I think these are sort of evolving to something, taking data that already exists and reusing it versus entering the data again. I struggle a little bit with that, but for some agencies, that may be the right way to go.
So it's really, it's not exactly, it doesn't fit the category of publicly available data, but it's privately available data, which the agency can then retrieve with what they need is the login and password from the prospective client.
And the agency's not getting it. It's like the client's putting it in, and it's just a totally seamless thing where the agency never gets that the login information. It's still the customer's login information because they're logging in on the carrier portal.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
what else? Anything else in technologies that your fast growth agencies?
I think the digital marketing piece, is super huge, especially, niche.
Well, let's talk about that. Yeah.
Niche.
So when we, and I'm happy to go into niche, but let's talk about when you say digital marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you see agencies doing that is working well for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some lead gen stuff out there, but I really think though it's more focused on things like doing really great SEO, doing social media well, creating, using things that create a more digital feel to the experience. Whether it's video calls, video proposals, you're creating that sort of experience that I would get working with other people. One of the things, like when I talk about like self-service, is that should be part of the sales process. Hey, as part of doing business with me, Michael, I'm going to make sure that you have access 24/7 to all the things you need, whether it's a certificate of insurance, whether it's your ID card. Worry never sleeps, as I've heard people say. And so if you get up at 3 a.m. and you want to check to see if read the fine print on your homeowner's policy, have at it. But
Yeah. Okay.
and we know from research that we've done with Safeco in the past is that agencies, or I'm sorry, that um, agencies that tell clients, all right, let me back up on that, just rephrase that. So customers that know that they have self-service capabilities available to them retain better than customers who don't know those capabilities exist. So whether that is a self-service portal that the agency has, is the way I look at it. I don't know if the research went that deep, but from a customer perspective, if I think about the way that I do business the rest of my life, if I do online banking, I can always go look at my bank balance anytime I want on my phone. It's there for me whenever I want. I can see if a bill got paid. It's the same thing that they're going to expect from another financial transaction with you, is the ability to go see, hey, where are my policy documents? I got my life insurance company all the time is sending me to the portal for different stuff.
Right.
I know it's there. I can get to it. And even though it may not be a high touch thing, it's easier for me than to try and get on the phone and talk to somebody during business hours, during the week, not during the lunch hour, and certainly not on Friday
Okay.
afternoon if I want to get something done.
So let me ask you a question about that, because there it would seem potentially two different ways that an agency or that a customer could access their data. So, personal anecdote from my life. Not long ago, now that the Janses have moved from Arizona to Portland, Oregon, putting the new family budget together, and I, wanted to see what my premiums were for now. In full disclosure, I've got Safeco in my blood for some reason, so all of my personal lines policies are with Safeco. So how about that?
Well, on behalf of Safeco,
Now,
thank you
I was
very
able
much.
to access. You're very welcome. Okay. So I was able to access my premium information through the Safeco portal.
Mhm.
I love my agent. I've had the same agent for more than 20 years, but so I was able to access it through the carrier portal.
Yep.
Can you talk about any observations you have about whether or not it's critical to have it on the agency side? Whether that's, does that create a bump in retention?
I think it's
This episode is brought to you by the Society of Insura-Preneurs, guiding owners to the insurance trifecta of faster growth, higher margins, and peak valuation. If you want a clear and reliable roadmap to growth, download our free 5-step 30% growth blueprint at www.insurapreneur.com with a dash in the middle. It's the same system that's helped agencies double, triple, and even 10x in size, and it's yours free. Visit insurapreneur.com.
I think it's a
What's
both
your
and.
observation about that?
I personally, I think it's a both and situation, and it's one where you can say, hey, I have the portal here. You can also go directly to the carrier, and depending on what it is, it may be like, hey, I want to go here to see my documents. I want to go here to do some other activity or let you know about something new, that may be easier to do through the agent portal than it is through Safeco, for example. And that's always changing as well. So I'm not an expert on what's in the portal and what's not. But I think what you have to sort of think about it through the customer's eyes. What's the best thing for them? And and it's you can say to them, hey, here's your choices, and they can choose one or other or both. But
Right.
I think you need to have something available because, again, independent agents write a lot more than just Safeco. So their other carriers may not have those things that Safeco does. So that's where I think then it comes from an agent perspective is like, okay, what is best for my customers may also be best for me. Maybe sending some to Safeco and maybe sending some others, from my other carriers to my portal instead. Or if they've got other insurance needs beyond Safeco too. So it's like there's lots of different ways to slice that. And it's something though that agencies should be thinking about. It's not something where they should be relying on their staff to manage that stuff.
Got it. All right. You had mentioned video calls and video proposals, and so let's break them in. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
How do you? And you had told me recently. You told me that like the most interesting anecdote about an agent who is using video proposals. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
He sent a video proposal to an 82-year-old customer and it got
Well,
viewed
he
15
was
times or something.
he
Tell
was
us what the
70.
story
He was
is.
75. He was 75.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough.
So
Oh, so he's a young guy. Okay.
I will no, I will name drop on this one. It's James Castell and Castell Insurance up in Sequim, Washington, and he is an Agent for the Future award winner.
Hmm.
And he won because he won for being if I remember correctly, an emerging leader. And because he teaches other agents, what he's learned that's made him successful. And so one of the stories that he's talked about is a guy named Walt, 75 years old, walks into the agency with all of his policy documents printed out, hands them to James. James says, "Great, Walt, I'm going to look this up. I'm going to create a custom proposal for you. I'm going to send it to you via a video and an email. And I want you to watch that. And when you've had time to watch it, I'll reach back out to you and we can then, finish the deal." And so there's a couple things I like about that is that the tool he uses, there's a bunch of them out there that will tell you when the person's watched it. And that
Like
may
Loom.
sound creepy, like
Yeah,
Loom,
but they all
Vidyard,
do. Yeah.
ScreenPal, yeah, all those. So what happens there though is that you can say that to the potential clients, like, "Look, I'm not going to bug you until you've had a chance to look at it." Versus I send you a PDF and an email, and then when do I actually reach out to you? It's like, I don't know if you've looked at it or not. I've got no
Good
idea.
point. Right. Yeah.
Or I call you
Uh-huh.
and I tell you, and then what do? You say, Michael, I say, "Michael, here's what I'm proposing to you. What do you think?" And you say, "I need to go talk to my partner, Teresa, and tell her about it," right? Who's the
Hmm.
salesperson now? Who's the producer? It ain't me anymore. It's you. And well, you know what you're talking
Right.
about because of who you are, but most people would not. And where
Right.
the video goes, "Here, watch the video, send it to your spouse, whatever, or your business partner," and because I think it works on the commercial side as well. So here's
Mhm.
what happened with Walt. So he sends it to Walt, and Walt watches it 15 times over the weekend. So James calls him up. He's like, "What happened? It looks like you might have had a problem." And he goes, "No, I liked it so much. I sent it to my friends and neighbors." So there's probably like a PII issue in there, but it's like,
And how much? So how many policies did he end up
he
with?
he got Walt and he got 4 of his friends.
Right
So he
on.
gets 5 customers from doing something that set him apart from any other agency because Walt thought it was so cool. And most agencies don't do that. Now, I will tell you that there are networks and there are captives that are going to be using that technology, and agencies that are not. Do you want to be the one sending a client a PDF versus, or the agency that's sending them a video that says, "Hey, here's what you asked for. Now you said you wanted to decline this, but let me tell you about the time a client, didn't get that, and here's what happened to them. I want you to look at these 3 things, and let me know what you think." And that's why I put this together for you, because this is a custom proposal to meet your needs. And please let me know if you want to change that declination to something, and get that policy instead, or that endorsement.
Got it.
And
Love
that
it.
stuff works. It's human.
Okay.
It's
So, well, we know from, just as a marketer, we know, but also, research and social science that when people can see and hear a human face and hear the human voice, it creates emotional connections that go so much deeper than, and I say that as a professional copywriter, very, very difficult to get
yeah.
with just the written word. So a close cousin of the video proposal, which happens after the conversation, is a video call or a video conference, kind of like what we're having now, or kind of like I had an hour or two ago when, I met an agent from Chicago for the very first time.
Mhm.
And, we spent 45 minutes on the phone, but we're like looking at each other and we're
Yeah.
assessing each other and we're making eye contact and boom, now and I end up with a new customer,
Yeah.
which wouldn't have happened, I don't think, without that. In my observation, this is maybe one of the gifts of COVID to the American
Mhm.
economy or to the American enterprise, where people became comfortable using the technology, and both parties generally have it, right? I mean, if you've got a laptop, you can get on a Zoom call with an insurance agent or anybody else. And my observation is the closing ratios just go way up if you're able to see and here. So I'm curious what your observation is on that one in
Exactly.
your survey.
Well, so, what would it have cost you to fly to Chicago and talk to that person?
Yeah, right, right. Well, it wouldn't. I mean,
And
it just ain't gonna.
it's not going to happen. But I've talked to plenty of
Right.
agencies, like agencies in Montana, or somebody who
Uh-huh.
does a niche business across multiple states. I had one agency say, "Look, I love doing video because then they can see my office because I write in 26 states. I'm never going to see them in person, but they can see my office, they can see my people, they can see me. It's
Well, you know
much
what was
more efficient
interesting?
and effective."
What was interesting about that call I had earlier this morning, or the Zoom
Mhm.
conference I had earlier this morning, is when I came on, she lit up because, first of all, she was surprised she actually got me. She thought she was going to get like the team, which isn't what I do
Mhm.
anymore, or that she'd, maybe get a video introduction, and that would be the first step. And because she had heard my podcast and seen video, she had a real sense of who I
Yeah,
am and my
that's a great
persona.
point. Yeah.
And then when she saw me, like there was an immediate human connection.
It's funny
Um,
how many people you've talked to who do video who say that people come up to them and talk to them as if they already know them because they've
yeah,
seen them on video, and they create that
right.
personal connection with them, whether it's
Yeah.
live or recorded.
Yeah, so that saves like the first half hour of a normal conversation. The whole rapport building and all that kind of jazz, establishing, social proof and credibility and trust, all taken care of. We're ready to get down to business almost immediately. Okay. Um, all right. So in your digital marketing bag, you've identified SEO, social media, video calls, video proposals, 24-hour access, obviously marketing automation, I think. So let
Yeah.
me ask you about this, because I'm never sure if I'm pushing my own clients kind of, how far ahead of the curve I'm pushing my clients.
Mhm.
But clearly, many of the fastest growing agencies that I work with, they're not only niche players. So we'll talk about that,
Mhm.
later. That's a different issue. But they're gaining some skill and mastery in email marketing, right? So they understand a little bit about list building. They understand a little bit about cultivating and creating relationship and creating credibility, using the sort of simple, basic tools of email marketing. I often find that for many agents, that is a little mystifying and a little bit intimidating, and they don't know what to say, and they don't know how to
Mhm.
create funnels, and they don't know how to create content to drive people to. I'm curious, whereas for those of us who have been internet marketers for 20 years, it's like, oh gosh, that's like not new stuff.
Yep.
But because it requires some creativity, so to speak. And I don't want to overemphasize that term, but you have to
Mhm.
create something that is unique to your
Yeah.
agency and unique to the relationship between your agency and the marketplace. I find that one can be a little bit intimidating. I'm curious what you're discovering in your research on that.
Yeah. Not so much in research as in like talking with agencies and actually seeing what's going on
Anecdotal, okay,
and what's going on in the industry in general, right? So I would say
yeah,
that just in terms of marketing, in just like in the marketing space, just not independent insurance agents, just in general, the idea is to, I think with marketing automation is being really good and of creating very targeted messaging. And in fact, I've been reading about some of these large companies who are using AI to create marketing automation campaigns of one. This one company did like 1 million different individual campaigns using AI to generate video for each, and I think it was for a car company. And so there's it's really intriguing to me that it's going to get to that point. And I'm spending a lot of time playing with artificial intelligence, and I think the opportunities there to start to create content, I think is going to really merge with a lot of these marketing automation offerings, or at least the ability to create content. One tip for anybody who's using AI is, if you want it to sound like you, feed it some of your content. Say, hey, examine this content. Tell me what it
yeah.
what's the tone? And okay, great. Now write me something about this other subject using that tone. And then you tend to
Got
get
it.
something that sounds more like you versus a unmodified AI drone. But that's so. I think you're going to see more of that, where you're going to see more people trying to get down to that very specific thing for that particular customer. Now, you did mention too, is that it's kind of mystifying. I think with any of the technology stuff that we talk about, it needs to have a champion. So, like each technology that the agency's rolling out, somebody's got to own it and be the person who's making sure it's working to its fullest potential. And so when I think about marketing automation, we have a marketer development program we've been doing for several years now. It's a very niche thing for us because there's not a ton of marketers being hired by agencies, but we really do try to help them with things.
But every year it seems to be more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
it's growing, but not as fast as I'd like to see it.
Over the course of 5 years or so,
mm-hmm.
I interviewed Chuck Blondino.
Mm-hmm.
And he would report on the annual agency survey. And during the course of those years, now it's been 3 or 4 years since we had our last conversation about it, but I remember, like, in the first interview, of the top tier agencies in Safeco's universe, something like 45% or so were they had a marketer. Now a marketer may have been Sally CSR, who spent 8 hours a week maybe on social media and posted pictures of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then or it could have been a half-time or a full-time employee. And then every year that I spoke with Chuck, it went up from, like whatever, mid 40s to, high 40s to 53 to 56% or something like that. So it did. And of course, I see this in my client base more and more. It does seem that there is a growing recognition that that marketing helps agencies grow. Whether you have a marketing-driven agency or a sales-driven agency where you support your producers with marketing, either way, it helps the agency grow.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we're still seeing an upward trend in the use of marketers, because I think what happens there, I think a lot of agency principals realize, one, they're very busy. Two, they're not trained marketers. And so to have somebody to support them allows them to get stuff done they otherwise wouldn't get done.
I totally agree. And I think early on you said that it was, like the top agencies. So yes, the top agencies have come to that realization, right? But there's an awful lot of people behind them that haven't gotten there yet. And I like to say it's great to send somebody. You should be training your producers, right? That producer is trained to work for themselves and to generate business for themselves. Mm-hmm. If you have a marketer, that marketer's job is to get business for all of the producers in the agency to work on. So to me, it's a force multiplier versus just having, just say, I'm just going to focus on training producers because we know the success rate for them isn't so fantastic. It's hard. It's you got to be using assessments and looking at, are these people actually good for sales or are they going to be struggling? Before you hire somebody. That's a whole other thing. But definitely the marketer, I think, has a huge impact, when you think about how they drive business for the entire agency. And the marketer needs to go in with that mindset. And it's sort of, I'm not just marketing the business, I'm marketing to make these producers more effective. And it's a little bit of a shift that a lot of marketers don't think about. So I'm just trying to push the brand out there. And it's like, no, that's not the end goal.
Right. No, got it. So you just said something that I think maybe it kind of wraps this whole point up, that the fast growth agencies, one, they're more inclined to have a marketer, and two, they're more inclined to use technology. And of course, in today's world, it's impossible to separate those two.
Yes.
Really. I mean, frankly, it always was. I mean, back in the day, before all of the digital technologies, for example, I had to really understand the technologies or the media of direct mail. I had to do the same thing with trade magazine advertising. So in other words, there's always a technical element to a marketer or for a marketer. Mm-hmm. In today's world, the challenge is there's so many media that are available. It can be confounding, which is why I always want to stress that yeah, there's a place for those sort of super early innovators in the bell curve. But we know, and I think the smart ones know, that a number of those technologies that they may dive into with big promises are not going to work out. That's a risk, right? So if we look at that bell curve, yeah, we all know that there are some agents, and they're kind of well known that they're going to grab every technology they can, and 2 years later you're going to discover that they're not using 20% of them because they just didn't work out that well. But I think we definitely, from an agent's point of view, if you look at that bell curve, you don't want to be at the sloping end where you're picking up on technology after it's already been so well demonstrated that you should have got it 5 years earlier. There's a sweet spot, I think, for every agency, but I think the sweet spot is never too late. That's a recipe for slow growth. It's somewhere, maybe not at the very, very beginning, because frankly, I mean, now that venture capital money is not as ubiquitous as it was 3 or 4 years ago, there are certain technologies that I think, maybe had a big name 2 or 3 years ago that may not make it because they don't have the runway. And that's the risk of that really super early adoption. But that little period after, and then certainly as the curve goes up, every agent should now, if they're a serious insurapreneur, they should make a commitment to be in that kind of a relationship with technology.
Yeah, and I think I put two things I sort of picked up on that too. Is one is that I think the technology piece, it's not just the marketers, it's everybody in the agency needs to be thinking about it. So, like for example, the video proposals piece, I think you're going to see, there are people who will pick up on that and be more successful because the close rates are higher. And there are other producers who won't do it because I just don't want to do video and it's too hard and that kind of thing. And I prefer to do email and PDFs. And then,
they're still thinking email and PDFs are breakthrough technologies.
Yeah.
However, good email. Look, I'm never going to be a critic of email. Effectively done, I think email marketing is always going to be one of the holy grails of marketing.
Everything has to have its place, has a place, right? You just have to figure out the right places. And the other thing I think too is with the technology piece is I like to, I actually teach a little bit on how to choose a vendor, and a lot of it is about how do you assess who's the right vendor, and then how do you measure the ROI on that? Because a lot of people go in and think, hey, I'm just going to get this, press the easy button, and I'm going to sit back, and marketing automation is going to take care of itself. And it's like it doesn't work that way. And it's like you have to not only invest the time in it, you have to be measuring what it's doing for you. Because sometimes you do have to cut things. It's just not the right fit for your agency, or maybe it's just not performing. It's not the right thing for you.
Okay, so moving on, you had indicated that there's some research coming out, and it's maybe not full or publicly available yet, about, I think it's demonstrating some gap between customer perceptions and agent perceptions of the hard market.
Yeah.
This has been an interesting market. We haven't seen anything like this for a long, long time, and it does. Unfortunately, the time to develop strategy for a hard market is long before it begins.
Yep.
But we all, sooner or later, we find ourselves in it. So here we are. What are you discovering about?
Yeah, that research is coming out soon. So I can't really share a lot on it yet. But I think in general, what you're going to see is some disconnects between what agents think and say and what customers think and say.
Yeah.
And I think it points to a lot of opportunities for agencies to think differently about how they're dealing with the hard market. I know it's tough for everybody. I mean, if you asked anybody on this call, have they experienced a harder market than this? I'd be surprised if anybody raised their hand. I could be, you could surprise me, but it is not something that any of us, I think, most of us have seen before. And I think this whole conversation, yes, working on it before, but I think, you invest in your agency so that when things like this happen, you are more able to adapt to it. I think about agencies that are wholly focused on personal lines right now. not a good place to be. The ones that are diversified into business lines, and other things are going to weather it a little bit better. The pattern doesn't stay the same on each of those things. It's always a different curve, right? Personal lines is here, right. Business lines maybe, I don't know where business lines is going, but it's on a different curve. And there's things like health and life and all that other stuff and benefits. So there are things that agencies can do to, just like a 401k, fund yourself with different funds and different lines of business, and you'll be better off.
Mm-hmm. Got it. All right. And the customer perception of the hard market, can you tease us a little bit about what early findings are on the research?
I would say that I think customers know. I don't think that's any surprise. They know this stuff is going on. I think I'm trying to be cagey here and not get in too much trouble. But it's, I would say generally speaking, though, that I think agencies are not doing enough to communicate with their clients. I think that's, and I would say that's probably the case. That's just communicate in general, right? It's, I think educate's a great one. I mean, we've been talking about that for a long time. It's like, you got to tell your clients about this stuff. And I think just like from a marketing perspective, and this is just generally speaking, because I haven't seen what we're picking up to say, here's what you should do. But, things I think about are, how often are you communicating with your clients? How often are you giving them information that's relevant to what's happening in their world right now? How well do you know what there is going on in their lives, so that you can be that advisor and, cover the things that need covering? I've been talking, for the last couple of years. It's just, I like to see agencies that are being proactive with renewals and, letting their clients know what's coming, asking them what's changed. I was talking with an agent in Upper Michigan who, she sends out a survey all the time to their clients before renewal. And they're picking up a ton of umbrella policies because there's all these different risks these people have and assets and things like that make it like, hey, if I didn't ask them with an automated survey, I just took care of a third of my customers right now with something that I didn't even have to call them. And so there's another example of using a self-service type thing to get the answers you need to serve your clients and serve the business as well, versus saying, hey, here's your list of phone numbers, Michael, start calling. And you know how well that works, getting a hold of a customer.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So before we open this up for questions, and I've got one that's already jumped in on chat. Let's wrap this up. I'm going to, here's an observation. You and I have known each other and worked in this industry for a long time, and I've been a player in this industry for almost 30 years. I recall the days when the internet started to become ubiquitous. There were those who thought that was the death knell for the independent agency system. That somehow the internet would do it. This is perhaps a legitimate prediction, that the internet would have the same effect on the insurance agency system that it had on the travel agency system. I remember doing research on that when people were anxious. So this goes back a ways, that indicated that there were roughly something like 40,000 independent travel agencies, and it didn't take long before that reduced down to about 14,000. So obviously it had, this is a technology that had a huge impact on this industry. And of course, every other industry too, like, journalism and media, and, we're like clicking off all these industries where, content delivery and movies and everything, it was changing. And so we were wondering, well, here we are now, 2024, the independent agency system is really doing quite well. As you'd indicated, market share is going up, whereas in the captive part of the industry, it's not. Indeed, the direct marketers' market share has gone significantly up over the last 20 years, certainly measurably up. And so it would seem that, if we look at like the research that you've done, the way that it sheds light on it, it does seem that while we have survived and in some ways as an industry thrived in the internet age, it has been the effective or thoughtful, careful, strategic use of technologies that's allowed agencies to do that. And those that have done that well, as you'd indicated, they might be growing 70% faster than the ones who do not do it well. So the impact of the internet, I think, has been really quite different than what people anticipated 20 years ago. And to some extent, it has to do with entrepreneurs who created technologies that were digital, that provided real services to the independent insurance agent.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
for sure.
boom. Yeah, I think, and so I think you'd probably agree that if we look to the future, that trend only continues.
Yeah, and I
That
think we need to be lifelong
understanding
learners. Yeah.
you need to be lifelong learners,
Mhm.
regardless of your age, and you need to carefully and strategically select the technologies that align with your agency strategies and your marketplace, and execute upon them with some skill and precision.
Yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
then one example of that I think is AI is probably going to be. You talk about the internet, talk about say cell phones, being sort of transformational. AI is one of those. There's a study from
Certainly.
Harvard Business School last fall.
Yeah.
They looked at people who used Chat GPT versus people who didn't, and the ones who did use it
Mm-hmm.
got 12% more tasks done, 25% faster, with 40% higher quality.
Oh, good numbers. I like that. All right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
12,
Okay.
25, 40, right? So I think the interesting thing about that is that it's not saying, hey, we just replaced an employee, but you did make your employees more efficient. So back to that way
Mm-hmm.
back in the beginning, talking about hiring, it's like, what if you made it easier and faster for your producers to close that sale because they're using AI to help generate some of the content they're creating?
Right.
Or you've got people doing service related things that AI can do more quickly so they can focus on things that are more sales focused. I think
Quite
that's one
likely.
example.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the AI stuff. It's not going away. It's going to be something that I think is going to have impacts, large and small, that we don't even have a clue yet what they're going to be. But
Yeah.
I think they're going to be
That's
much
an
likely to
industry.
be.
I subscribe to about 3 daily AI
Mhm.
focused newsletters and am amazed that literally new products, they're announcing new product offerings, like multiple new product offerings every single day.
The VC money is crazy. They're throwing it at anything. If I say I've got
They love
AI
it.
in my
Right.
name, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
here's $1 million. But
If
one
it's
of
a
them,
.ai, we'll invest
yeah.
in it.
I don't know if you've got Ben's Bites on your list of newsletters, but that's a good one. And he actually, I saw him doing a podcast, and one of the things he said is think of AI not as that, not as a tool, but think of it more your use of it as being a manager
Right. I
of
kind of
of
think of it as a
of
lieutenant,
it as like another
somebody who's
employee.
always next to me, ready to engage in an intelligent conversation, and to do, if sometimes, if I, with the appropriate prompts and interactive prompts, delivering something that's 80% good for me
Yeah.
in almost zero time. So,
I've heard it described as a.
as I may have mentioned, our next mastermind meeting is in June, and I'm pretty certain that my focus is going to be on the effective use of AI in an independent insurance agency. So
Yeah,
I'll release more about that in the next couple of weeks.
great.
Boom. I'm going to open this up to see what kind of questions we might have from the audience. And before I do that, Dale, again, thank you. Thank you for sharing so freely with me and with our listeners, and also for the contribution that you've made consistently and steadily to the industry year after year. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hey, thank you very much, Michael. I love working with independent agents and the impact you have on your communities, and the great jobs you provide people. It makes me get up every day and feel happy that I'm doing what I'm doing.
Here, here. All right. We have a question from Daniela. I know Daniela. She's a member of our mastermind group, and her niche is taxis and limousine services in New York City. She said, Dale, I'm interested in adding an introduction video on my website to stand out. Do you have any advice on topics or points to focus on?
So wait, tell me a little bit more about this niche.
I can see if, let me see if she's,
I'm available.
there we go, Daniela. Good to
Hi.
see you.
Hi.
Hey there.
So
So
my
yeah,
niche is the commercial auto in New York City, taxis, limos, Ubers, ambulance. That's my niche.
Okay. So let me ask you a
TLC,
question.
taxi limousine commission.
Taxi.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm gonna ask you a question, and you can't use the word service. So what differentiates you working with those clients versus anybody else who's out there?
Always being available to answer all the questions, not only for the insurance, everything that has to do with that.
Mhm.
Most of my clients don't speak English or speak very, very poor
Okay.
English. So I'm in the community for 30 years, the same community. So
Mhm.
most of my clients do need, explanation in different languages, actually. So it's a lot of help and babysitting.
Yeah. You back to your question about the video piece is how many of the languages do you speak personally?
Only two, English and Russian.
But you've got other people too in your staff who do?
Everybody speaks Russian.
Okay.
Even if it's not perfect, they must
Mhm.
speak Russian
Okay.
because that's, I do have clients who come from, ex-Soviet Union.
Yep.
They do speak different languages, but
Mhm.
most of them do speak Russian, even if it's a poor
Awesome.
Russian. So
Okay.
that's,
Cool. Because I think with a video is like showcasing some of the languages, I think would be really neat. Switching, then you do subtitles when you're speaking, whatever the other language is, like opposite language.
Okay.
Subtitles would be kind of cool. But talking about your agency, how long you've been in business, I like to, one of the things we like to talk about too a lot with agencies is what are you doing to support your community? Do you have any community causes that you're supporting as an agency?
Not lately, but I used to.
Okay, yeah. So that's a good one because I think people like to do business with businesses that are giving back. We have a thing called Agent Giving that is really focused on that particular thing, and because it's so important, and it's one of the things that gets me excited about going to work every day is knowing that we're helping businesses that support their communities. These big faceless directs, they're not going to be supporting their communities, not in the way that you can. But I do think though that sort of highlighting what makes you different, what kind of things you provide, seeing your staff. I love the videos where people sort of like, hey, let me introduce you to the staff. Here's who we are, here's what we do, here's why it's important and why you should do business with us, and here's what's going to be different about working with us versus somebody else.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you. Good
Yeah, and frankly, Daniela, just listening to you and watching you describe what you do in helping people probably where Russian is their primary language, helping them succeed in the insurance part of their market for them to do their job. Boom. I mean, to me, that was like everything. That was like, oh, okay. If I was in that marketplace, I'm at home now. I know where to go. Because I think that you've defined your niche right there perfectly.
I feel that every day I have so many opportunities to help everybody, whoever steps in, because they have so many problems.
Oh, I mean, you could practically
record that right there.
I could send you the recording of what we just did. You got it. Yes.
Thank you, guys.
You being yourself to your marketplace. This is what has helped you get to where you are now. And what Dale and I have spoken about in the last hour, using technology to multiply Daniela and to amplify your message and your voice and your presence in your niche. Boom. That's what's going to get you to the next level.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
And I hope I'll see you, Michael, soon in New York, right?
Yes, I still have plans to fly out to New York and see my son. We're negotiating dates. He has such a busy social life. I have to dance around his
Yes.
dates. So
I'll take you
unlike
out to
me, he
dinner.
has such a
If he is
busy
Wow.
busy,
social
I'll
life.
take you out to dinner. Don't
This
worry.
is
Okay.
quite a
Oh,
revealing
okay.
podcast. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, there we
Okay.
go. All right.
Okay, guys.
I'm going to turn to I realize that we've gone well past the top of
Thank
the hour,
you.
but I'll turn back to to the audience. If anybody has a question, raise your hand, or you can chat it, or we can release Dale to go about his business, of which I know he has a lot to do. I happen to know you're in Milwaukee, and so you're taking
Yep.
care of business and in multiple spheres of your life right now.
With my parents and next stage of their
Yeah,
lives. So so
yeah,
a lot of work to do, but this has been a great conversation. Really, really
yes.
appreciate
No, I've enjoyed it. All right. Okay. No more questions popping up right now. Dale, we'll be in touch. And let me know when you want me to release this recording to the wild. I'll hold off until you give me the signal. So again, meanwhile,
Yeah.
thanks for everything that you do. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Daniela, nice meeting you. Nice meeting everybody else too. Thanks for listening.
Take care.
See ya.
Hi, Michael Jans again. And before we wrap up, let me share something that still inspires me to this day. One of our early Blueprint members, Lee Henry, showed the insurance world what is truly possible. He installed a system that allowed him to take 26 weeks off every year while growing his agency by $400,000 in commissions, not just for 1 year, but year after year after year. That's the power of working on your business, not just in it. If you're ready to transform your insurance business, and I think you are, if you're listening to this podcast, visit Insura-Preneur.com with a dash in the middle to get your copy of the 5-step blueprint for fast growth and peak valuation. This is the same system that's helped agencies grow from $6 million to $120 million or more in premium. Please don't let another day go by without exploring what's possible for your agency. Head to Insura-Preneur.com and download the blueprint. Meanwhile, keep challenging the status quo and don't just beat your own records, beat industry records. Build a business that gives you and your family the life of your dreams. This is Michael Jans, and you've been listening to the Insura-Preneur Podcast. And remember, Insura-Preneur has a dash in the middle. So go dash there and get a copy of your blueprint. Talk to you soon.